Welcome to week 6 of our message series that we have been calling In the Beginning. We are moving through chapters 1 through 11 of Genesis, and this is the primeval history. I hope you are all having a great summer. We are in the middle of summertime. We are in the middle of the message series and in the middle of the story. We've been talking about it as acts of a play, and we're squarely in Act 2. Act 1 is the story of creation, and Act 2 is the story of uncreation, creation's rebellion against God. Last week we read about how Adam and Eve's son Cain killed his brother Abel. And while you were gone this week, Adam and Eve have been busy. They had another son, Seth. And from Seth we read in chapter 5 a long line of descendants that leads us to our main character this morning, Noah. Although it's not exciting to read genealogy, it's important because a lot happens. Right after the genealogy, we see that things have gone from bad to worse. We read, "The Lord saw that the wickedness of humankind was great in the earth, and that every inclination of the thoughts of their hearts was only evil continually." Wow, really? Humankind is only evil continually, only ever evil, every day, all the time. Notice the phrase, "the Lord saw." We heard this phrase at the beginning of the creation story. And we'll see throughout this story that there are many literary references to the creation story. Many elements of this story recall to mind Genesis 1, 2, and 3. This is one of those. In Genesis 1, we heard the Lord saw everything that he had made and that it was very good. Now we hear that the Lord saw the wickedness. Things have changed since creation. And the Lord was sorry that he had made humankind on the earth, and it grieved him to his heart. This is the backdrop for the story that we're reading today. Wow. A God in mourning, distressed, worried about the state of creation. God is grieved to his heart. Well, God is only good continually. Now creation is now only evil continually. And it hurts God's heart. You know, motive matters. The interior motive matters in terms of how we interpret an action. Think of the act of killing someone. There's a difference between killing someone out of self-defense or cold-blooded murder. We see this in smaller moments of our lives as well. Sometimes I go shopping at Murphy's, and people are comfortable with me, and they'll come over and they say hi, and they'll look into my cart and judge what's in there. They will say things like, "Father, I see that you like potato chips, or you drink soda, or are you a Haagen-Dazs man?" And the motive for this story matters too. Sometimes the flood is painted as a horrific act of a merciless and angry God. But this verse tells us the motive really is different. God is grieved for his creation. And after all, throughout Genesis, we've seen a good and loving God. And we've also seen a God of justice, but also a God of compassion. God does not love sin. God does not love evil. God does not love it when his children experience brokenness. He wants much better things for his children. He wants order. He wants peace and harmony and love and goodness. So this verse here shows us motive. God grieves, so God intervenes. God grieves, so God intervenes. Motive matters. And God's motive towards us is good. It is always good. What's God going to do? Enter Noah. Noah found favor in the sight of the Lord. Noah was a righteous man, blameless in his generation. Noah walked with God. Noah was a man who has found favor with God. He's not just any man, but a man of impeccable character, a man who would obey. And God said to Noah, "Make yourself an ark of cypress wood. Make rooms in the ark and cover it inside and out with pitch. This is how you are to make it." God tells Noah to build an ark, and he gives him specific instructions to do this. Now, one more detail. It has never rained. So what? Yes, let's go back to Genesis 2. For the Lord God had sent no rain upon the earth. Now, an ark certainly is a crazy concept for us, and it certainly must have been crazy even to Noah. And it probably would have been crazier for everyone in Noah's day, because it had never rained. Everyone must have thought, this man is nuts. So God tells him to make an ark, and then he continues. For my part, I'm going to bring a flood of waters on the earth, to destroy from under the earth all flesh in which is the breath of life. Everything that is on the earth shall die. For my part. That's always God's instruction to us. You do your part, I do my part. In God's plan, the waters are going to return over all the earth. This is another reference back to the creation story. It will be just like it was before creation after the flood. Then we read, Noah did this. He did all that God commanded him. He built the ark. What we see is an example of great faith. I want to pause here for a second. When we're familiar with these stories, we move too quickly. What happened next is not the flood. Immediately following this instruction, what happened next was Noah started cutting down trees. He started sharpening his tools. He had to get to work. The task he had before him was no weekend project. He was looking forward to getting free shipping, but the Prime website was down. He had to do it himself. It must have taken him a really long time to build the ark. God does not often microwave his agenda. God does not often jumpstart to the finished product. He can, but that's not the norm. God is a God of process. God's plans take time to unfold, and it's always within the human experience. At the end of Genesis, Israelites experienced hundreds of years of slavery before Moses. Hundreds of years of silence of the Old Testament prophets preceded the birth of Jesus. And then when Mary gets word that she will be with child, she has 9 months of pregnancy and 30 years of waiting before Jesus begins his ministry. Often, what's required of us is a lot of faithful working and waiting. We come to church. We hear the stories of faith inspired by mountaintop moments. And most of life is not lived, as we know, on the mountaintop moment. It's lived down below. But the last thing that I want to do today is to mislead you. Noah is a great man of faith, but he's a man of faith because of his daily faithfulness. Morning after morning, evening after evening, building the ark, staying faithful to God. Another point about waiting, you ever hear someone say, well, if God isn't giving you what you want, it's because you're really not ready to receive it. Well, no doubt, there are certainly times when this is true. But other times, it just takes a while for God's plan to unfold. Noah is doing exactly what God has told him to do, and is still taking forever. Sometimes you could be doing the right thing and still have to wait. Even in waiting, Noah kept working, kept serving. He remained faithful to God. Remember, God's motive towards us is always good. Sometimes his plan takes a while to unfold. If you are waiting, keep waiting. Keep persevering, keep trusting, keep serving, keep working, keep your eyes fixed on God. Sometimes the most important thing that we can do is to simply remain faithful. So, after all that time, he finishes the ark. God sends the rain. For 40 days and 40 nights it rains. The wait was still not over for Noah. We read. But God remembered Noah, and God made a wind blow over the earth, and the waters subsided. But God remembered Noah. This is the turning point. After all that waiting, God is doing a new thing. Act 3 begins here. Really, it's the peak, the pinnacle of all that we read so far. Act 1, creation. Act 2, the fall, you might say uncreation. Here, Act 3, recreation. God is doing a new thing. God is making all things new. So now we hear he sends a wind over the work, just like the beginning of creation when he sent his Spirit over the waters. After the flood, God blesses Noah and his sons, and he says, "Be fruitful and multiply and fill the earth." And goes on to say, God said, "This is the sign of the covenant that I make between me and you and every living creature that is with you. For all future generations, I have set my bow in the clouds." we see that the rainbow is the sign that he'll never destroy the earth again in a flood. Here, God restates so much of what was originally stated in the creation story. He resends his spirit. He reissues his blessing to Noah. He renews his covenant relationship. The story of Noah and the flood is the story of recreation. It shows how our good God, who wanted good for his creation, intervened again in order to restore the world. But at the end of the story, there's this strange episode in Noah's life. He gets drunk, and his son sees his nakedness. What is that all about? Well, as good as Noah was, he wasn't perfect. These are references to sin and the fall. Wine is made from fruit, and nakedness are references back to chapter 3 in Genesis. God has accomplished good through this story, but it's not complete yet. We need to keep reading. The story demands that we read on, because just as the story looks back, it also looks ahead. It's a foreshadowing of what is to come. Noah couldn't bring about the perfection that was desired, but eventually Jesus would. Noah and the ark prefigures Jesus and the church. And just as Noah built the ark, Jesus built the church. Just as the ark was a means to rescue and restore creation, the church is a place of refuge, a means of rescuing people from the deep, chaotic waters of the world. Our church is a means of restoration to go out into the entire world and to bring renewal. Still here today, God's motive towards the world is good. It's always been good. And God is not distant. God is not uninvolved. God is not uninterested. God is at work restoring the world, and he's using the church to do it. You know, who is the church? And we've said this many times before, and sometimes we forget it. The church is you and me. This story points to us here today. So even though we're still in the middle of summer, with some of us still going on vacation, I want to extend an invitation to be part of the church, to be part of what God is doing in the world. I want to invite you to get involved. You may have thought about it before. You've thought about serving in ministry or engaging in a small group. This could be your time. Check out our website for more information about checking out a ministry or joining a small group in the fall. God's motive is good. He's working through the church to bring restoration to the world. And even though you might be waiting on God for something, just like Noah, you can get to work while you wait.